Welcome to Impacto AZ, a podcast dedicated to centering Latinx voices on the important issues of our time. Joining me today is Jesus Garcia, a demographer who specializes in geographic information systems and whose work has been used many times, notably drawing political boundaries, whether for a county board of supervisor election, a city council election, or even a school board election, and who has gained some accolades for his work, as noted in a book called Geography of Hope, for a project he did along with his daughter. So thank you for joining us, Senor Garcia, today. We really appreciate the work you've done in the community and on behalf of Latinx communities across the country, and most notably in California. I should say you're a resident of Bakersfield, California, where your home base, and you've also been part of the Dolores Huerta Foundation there,
Yes,
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Dolores' demographer.
Okay. And I'm just going to let our readers and our viewers and listeners know that we also may be joined later by the Impacto AZ executive producer, Juan Rodriguez, who has worked on many political campaigns himself and is quite aware of how important it is to have fair and equitable districts when electing the candidates of your choice. So, Jesus, to get started, why don't you share with us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up doing this kind of work? I might want to add that I did meet you more than 30 years ago when you were a wee lad working for the U.S. Census Bureau.
Yes.
Out of Washington, D.C. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in this type of work.
Well, Jonathan, again, it's a pleasure to be with you again. You're one of my dearest friends, and we've had many of these conversations, so hopefully this one won't be as long-winded as all the rest. So I have always loved geography. I have always loved maps. I have always loved history. And I've also always loved to see how the three can combine and impact our society. So I have a degree in urban planning from UCLA, where I was a student of Leo Estrada, who back in the mid-'80s was the preeminent Latino Chicano person involved with the Census Bureau. Through his effort, I was fortunate enough to get a job at the U.S. Census Bureau headquarters, Population Division in Washington, D.C., where I spent 5 years diving into my love of data and maps and statistics and understanding the dynamics of our population, in particular the growing Hispanic population, as it was termed at the time. So from there I came back home to Bakersfield, California, and I've worked for the past several years with Dolores Huerta. Most people, everybody knows who she is. So I was pleased to work with her on a project through what's called the Equitable Maps Coalition, where we went and tried to have fair maps applied to, as you mentioned, city councils, school boards, school districts, water districts, healthcare districts. So I've been to a lot of meetings presenting to boards of different types, different understandings, I got to tell you. Some of them were very happy to see what I was saying. Others not so, but I just let the data speak for itself. And I think that was what sort of has gotten me all along is I use data statistics from authoritative sources from the census and county and the like. And so that's what I use to present my facts.
And before we get into more on that, I just want to mention that you also grew up, as I understand it, in Los Angeles, correct? Mm-hmm. But you also have roots in Zacatecas.
Beautiful
Mexico,
Zacatecas,
right?
Yes. And
tell us about that. Is that where your family's from, or were you born in Mexico?
So I was born in Zacatecas, and the reason you see the background I have is because that's how it looks right now in the summertime. And so I often go on my run out in the lake, and I look at the beautiful clouds and the like. So Zacatecas is in the middle of the country. It's beautiful. Unfortunately, it's also been the source of a lot of migration. People migrated because of the Mexican Revolution, droughts. The Bracero program went into those reasons. You got people. So there's a big push-pull from central Zacatecas, from my region, to Los Angeles. And so I think at some point there were more residents of Zacatecas in Los Angeles than there were in the state there. It's a
And what
beautiful
year
place.
did you move to Los Angeles?
So
You
I
were
moved 1962 on May 22nd. On May 23rd is my birthday, so I got a brand new country for my birthday, my fifth birthday, and I'm still
okay.
here.
All right.
I have
Well,
both passports, by the way, just to let you know.
Mexico's loss was our gain, but I know now if you're a dual citizen or you have two passports, you can go back and forth. So
Yes.
congratulations with that. So since we're talking about map making and districts, that has really been top of the news lately, of course, with what's happening in Texas and the desire there to create 5 new districts that they hope will be Republican districts. California responded in kind under Governor Newsom, saying, "Well, we're not gonna sit idly by. We're going to create new districts that hopefully that are partisan and favor Democrats." And this is all being done in the mid-year, by the way. You do the census every 10 years. This is doing midway through that process, which is also a bit unusual. But tell me, what do you think of that that's going on? Is this good for democracy or is this not good for democracy?
Well, first of all, I got to say this is a long time coming. The two technologies I use for my data analytics and my computer mapping, they are companies that are over 50 years old. In fact, 2 years ago, I went to the celebration of the 50th anniversary. So what that
Okay.
tells you is that these concepts of data analytics and mapping have existed for a while. Many people are now just finding out about it. But when I was at the US Census Bureau in 1990, I could see at that point what the future was as far as the Latino community. At that point, the Latino population was about 9% of the U.S. total, mainly concentrated in the southwestern states of California, Los Angeles, California, Texas, Arizona, and the like. Today, Latinos make up 20% of the population. Um, 30% in California, 30 or 40% in Texas. And so this change in the demographics is partly what is causing all of this. For example, in Texas touts itself as a growing state where we're growing by leaps and bounds. Well, what they don't tell you is that 9 out of every 10 new Texan is a Latino, and that is occurring across the rest of the country. Other things you don't hear about is the Latino population growing in North Carolina, or Georgia, or obviously Florida. So Latinos of all stripes, Mexican, Cuban, Puerto Rican, are becoming a larger share of this country in its totality, and the politics that this population brings is what has both political parties sort of on edge, because they don't know where Latinos are going to go. Obviously, in Florida, some of the Latinos are much more conservative, so that's gone very well for them. Here in California, not so much. In Texas, it's sort of half a dozen here, 6 there. So the change in the population is what's pushing all of this. Latinos, on average, the average age of the Latino population is like 27 to 30 years old. The average age of the non-Latino white population is in 42, 43. So there's a 13 or 14-year gap in that. Now, the political parties have been very used to tracking their voters. Both the Republican and the Democratic Party have been very good at knowing who the voters out there, how they vote, and then cater to them. What's happening is that there's this new dynamic of the Latino voter coming in, and Latinos are not understood. And political parties have known this and have made consistent efforts to prevent Latinos from growing in political influence. And the classic example here is in California. California, blue state, Democrat, run by Democrats, all of that. Well, in 2010, Republican Governor Schwarzenegger initiated a independent redistricting commission. And I can tell you from my Democratic friends, they were all up in arms, afraid that, this was going to destroy the Democratic Party. And so what I told them is, look, take a stack of dominoes, throw them up in the air. half of them are going to, 20 of them will be white. Do it again. Do it 5 times. 19, 18, 20, they're all going to be white. The side face up. At that point, the Latinos in the state assembly, Congress in California were, minuscule in numbers. As soon as the new redistricting commission came in, the Latino Legislative Council count grew 3, 4, 5, and now even more so. So in that case, in this case, the Democratic Party was keeping the Latino population from growing. In Texas, it's the opposite. They're doing the same thing, but to maintain, to eliminate African American voters and still disenfranchise the Latino growth. So, we as Latinos, we have to be careful of who we are aligning with, because both parties have more of an interest in their goals and not necessarily that of the Latino population.
And I wonder, I haven't been able to research this completely, that this kind of partisan drawing of maps can and has backfired in the past. And I'm not sure, and that's just purely based, I guess, on growth and how people they assume are going to vote one way may vote another way. I don't know if you've looked into that, but.
Well, again, that is the fear that these parties have. Again, here in California, the Democratic Party had control of redistricting for as many years as possible. They knew who their voters were. They knew how they were going to vote, and so there was no need in their eyes to change. So an independent redistricting commission was forced to them by a Republican governor. In the case of Texas, they Latino vote is a little more diverse, and so this past election they did trend a little more conservative, and so the districts that are created now are taking that future into account, but don't be so sure about that. Again, Latinos in Texas and in other states have to see that the political parties represent them. And if they don't, then they're going to turn on them. And I think that's the fear. So I have yet to analyze the Texas maps. But what I can tell you is I did a hypothetical Texas redistricting on my own. And whereas right now, I think there are 13 or 14 Latino majority districts in Texas. In a first pass that I did, that number grew to 17 or 18. So I was able to add 3. I went back and I did a much more partisan effort, but also keeping Latinos in their account. And I was able to come up with 20 out of the 38 congressional districts in Texas as being Latino. And they were beautiful because all my maps are beautiful. So,
we gotta pat ourselves on the back too, right? If no one else is going to.
And so I think that's important. Thing is I have the skill set, I have the experience, I have the data, I have the computer stuff in front of me. Most community people are not aware of this as an issue. As I mentioned to you, I've been using these mapping and data technologies for 30 or 40 years from the beginning. Others, have just learned how to spell GIS.
Right.
And what we need more folks in this space, in this field. It's a great job to have. I mean, again, I love geography and data, so for me, I'm in heaven. But it's a great job to have. It's used. GIS is used in every governmental agency around the world, not just here in the United States.
Let me take a moment to welcome our executive producer of Impacto AZ, Juan Rodriguez. He just joined us. Welcome, Juan, who has himself worked on many political campaigns.
Hello, John. Thank you. And Jesus, good to see you. It's been a while. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm taking great interest in what you're talking about because I happen to work campaigns in Texas as well.
Oh,
and right now I'm working on a congressional campaign down there. But I want the focus to remain on your data and not so much what I'm doing. But I am paying attention to everything you're saying.
In the past, when I've covered stories relating to redistricting, especially as it pertains to people of color, the Voting Rights Act is always brought up as one of those things that must be followed or these maps can be challenged. And it's to ensure equitable and fair representation, right? Is that still being adhered to?
the census is in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, where it mandates that the House of Representatives will be redistributed based on population. The problem with the original Constitution is that it counted slaves as only 3/5 of individuals, and it didn't count Native Americans. And so right away we had an issue. It had to take I think the 14th Amendment before every person could be counted as part of the census for redistricting. It's also embedded in the Constitution is the concept that you count all individuals. Okay, all individuals in the census, because there's two parts to this. There's one is the census of population, but then there's another part called the Citizen Voting Age Population, or CVAP. The Voting Rights Act that protects disenfranchised groups, Latinos, Blacks, African Americans, applies here. So ideally, under the Voting Rights Act, if you can create a district that is 50% plus one more person of one of these protected groups, then you're mandated to create a district. And so we've seen, but the authority to create districts is assigned to the board that is creating them. So it's like, you're letting the fox take over the chicken coop. So what happens is in many, many, many places and for generations, the boards themselves created districts that in some cases, ignored federal law. And so you got a school district out in the middle of, Tupelo, wherever, and they're just hoping they won't get caught. Well, what's happening is we have increasing folks that are vigilant, and thank you to all of those, because we can't keep track of all the tens of thousands of school districts and water boards and 3,000 city councils and county supervisors to look at these issues. And so what happens is while we have lawsuits in North Carolina, we have lawsuits in Louisiana, we have lawsuits in apparently Utah now, saying these districts are not complying with the federal Voting Rights Act. So how do you prevent that from occurring? Let's say you're an executive, in Washington D.C. and you want to reduce the possibility of an ethnic population gaining a political stronghold. Well, you go after the edges. So, for example, one of the edge was you add a citizenship question to the census the day, literally months before you go out. If you know anything about the census, it takes years to change a period, a comma, a letter, a word. And so here, the previous Trump administration wanted to add a citizenship question, which probably would have resulted in a declining response rate, which would have had an impact on the reapportionment and on and on and on. You can see things.
And as I understand it, now he also wants to not count undocumented residents.
Yes, and that goes again against the Constitution itself. Where it says the 14th Amendment, where you count the whole person. The Constitution, the 14th Amendment does not say the whole person minus blah, blah, blah.
It says all residents, right? It doesn't mention persons, whether they're citizen or not.
It's the whole person. You can look it up. I'm looking at it right here. So you do that. And then so as you begin to minimize or eat at the edges of these pillars that hold up our democracy, what happens is what we're seeing today. People begin to either not respond to the government or they don't trust what they say. The latest example is Trump eliminating the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Talk about the absolute most boring job you could ever have, is sitting there looking at unemployment data going up and down across the world. We have 30, 40 years worth of statistics, and this thing literally runs on its own. So you don't like a number that shows you we're heading into, an economic downturn? Well, you get rid of the messenger. The person was probably either a career federal employee or a dedicated statistician whose job was only to have was whose job was provide the best information possible. And that's how I felt when I was at the U.S. Census Bureau. What I was doing was not for me; it was doing for the nation. Okay, and my data that I was working on, I was careful to provide as factual of information as was possible. And I think that's the case with most federal employees working in this. And so this attack on federal employees, this attack on intelligence, mathematicians and statisticians, and is a direct attack at eating around the edges of our democracy. And once we start defining the Constitution by not counting all persons, then we are in a very, very difficult state.
Well, I, for one, am glad you are not one of those statisticians in one of those big, huge buildings in Washington, D.C. that you could never find was back there among the stacks. And as I understand it, you could actually die back there and someone might not know you're there for a few days. But and you've broadened your horizons. Now you've spent time in beautiful California and around the country. And you and the work of your daughter were actually featured in a book.
Yes.
In helping the Bakersfield City Council elect a more diverse council, right? I mean,
yes.
With your mapping work. Maybe tell us a little bit about that work. And obviously this author found it compelling and wanted to write about that.
Yeah, so I've done, I don't know, 50 of these or more. So, they all sort of run into each other. However, there are a few standouts. And you mentioned the Bakersfield City Council. Might also want to look up the Whittier Union High School District, or the, as another one, or BART. I'm very part of BART. I redistricted BART. But talking specifically about the Bakersfield City Council, if you know Bakersfield, this is the home of Kevin McCarthy and everything that he, embraced. Conservative, anti everything. I mean, they're only now beginning to recognize Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, 30 years after the fact. Wow. And so what I saw when I started drawing the maps for the city council was a potential. The city of Bakersfield was dragging its feet because I think they knew what was coming. But I was, wily enough or fortunate enough or to find a lot of people that recognize the potential. And so I reached out to folks. I was working for the Dolores Huerta Foundation at the time, doing redistricting. Again, Bakersfield City was one of about 20 I was doing for them. So I was, I had many, many other maps in my mind at the time. But I reached out to folks at the Punjabi Sikh community, and they are a growing population here in the city of Bakersfield and in the Central Valley. And I met some wonderful, wonderful people involved in that. And I said, hey, here's some potential. What do you guys think? And so what occurred is my idea, my concept that something was possible got turned into a actual physical map. The Unity map, we even picked a nice name for it. And so what happened is what I've seen in other instances, like the Whittier Union High School District, or Fresno Board of Supervisors, or Kern County Board of Supervisors, is people began to see themselves in the map. They could recognize it. See, I have a test for myself. Is if I show you a data table, or if I show you a map and you don't point to something and say, Jesus, what's going on there? Within 3 seconds, then I have failed. It was very easy to showcase the problems with the old map and the qualities that came from the new map in the city of Bakersfield. So while all that was going on, there was a author at the Esri Press, ESRI, that's the mapping company, and he was fishing for stories I think when I met him, he said he had 20 stories in mind. And the stories were the use of data and GIS and technology to impact local change. And so,
And the local change you brought to that situation was you've got some new members from the Punjabi
yes,
community. Any
yes.
Latino
Well,
new
well,
members? Or
well, so what happened is we were fortunate enough to be in a story on Ebola. There are other stories about Ukraine, not Ukraine, Prague. There's stories about demining around the world, and so I'm very happy to be a part of that book, The Geography of Hope. Um, but what occurred is once the map was adopted, and believe you, the city was the established board, which had been conservative, Republican for the entire existence of the city of Bakersfield, was shocked beyond all means to have a map that created opportunity. So what happened? Well, 2 years later, we have a Manpreet Kaur, a beautiful, intelligent, college-educated, homegrown Punjabi woman who has come in and along with other board members have changed the city council in an immense degree. Now it's 3 persons of color out of 5. 3 out of 5. And the young people can see themselves. One of the current city council members running for assembly, and he's got 20,000 endorsements already. The Manpreet's career is she's a young lady just starting out, is wide open, and so that's what this is about. It's about creating opportunities for people that are not afraid of the future, that represent the future. Whereas what we have in the old city council, and we're not done yet. The high school district and the board of supervisors is still behind the times. But in the city of Bakersfield, we're beginning to see what is happening. So what's happened recently? Well, the city council about 3 weeks ago passed a resolution to rename H Street to Avenida Cesar Chavez. No, not Cesar Chavez Boulevard, Avenida Cesar Chavez. It's the longest road within the city of Bakersfield, and the new Dolores Huerta Peace and Justice Center got, I think, $300,000 to fix sidewalks and lighting and things of that sort. It's a very fascinating, and that whole effort was led by Manpreet Kaur. But if you look at the opposition, it's the same old tired, these radicals are coming in, taking over, blah, blah, blah. And people were like, we're talking about sewers. We're talking about lighting. We're talking about, fixing sidewalks.
All the things we want our city council to do.
Yes.
Right?
And so they want them too, but they just don't want it for the Dolores Huerta Foundation. Okay. Or they don't want it for Cesar Chavez, who is a hero of our country. So that's what, in my opinion, makes me feel good. Talk about, again, Whittier High School District is now 100% Latino. Okay. BART has 9 trustees. There are now 2 Latinos on the board. There were none when I was redistricting. So all these people, except for Manpreet, don't know who the heck I am or I was involved. But you can go to the BART website, and there's like 3 hours of council meetings. If you want a good night's sleep, I recommend you go check them out. But most of this work that I do is dry, it's boring, it's here by myself, and every now and then I get to talk to somebody wonderful like Juan or my good friend Jonathan, and so this will be my highlight for the week.
Okay, well, we have to wind it down. We do have time for one more question, and I'm going to see if Juan has something for you.
I do, and this centers more around you. I know you spent a great deal of time working for the census, and maybe I missed it at the intro. Currently, the work you do, are you affiliated with an organization, or are you a consultant? And how does that, whichever one you're doing, how does that affect your workload and your approach?
Well, I've got my little Shingo up there. You go to
Okay.
LinkedIn and then check me out. I've got a little pension, and I've got a health care from my government job. But I got to tell you, when I left my local government job, I got a job back with the U.S. Census
Oh,
as a local, representative here in Kern County. So for a year, I had the great pleasure and honor of going up and down the Central Valley talking about data and maps and the census. I was in heaven. It was because most of the work that I do is in front of a screen. I never talk to people. But here I was able to see folks, see what their visions are, their hopes, their desires, and in a way, as people got counted in the census, you can see new money for schools or new money for this or new money for sidewalks, and so again, that's what makes me feel positive. But yeah, I got my own little business here. I've worked on a number of other projects, some of them really good. I've got a project looking at gun violence in the city of Antioch right now. I did another project on the Raza database, which is
Talk a little bit about that before we
yes.
sign off here, because that was
Raza
an
database
interesting
was
one.
2 years of basically very uncomfortable, and it was for our friend Roberto, Jonathan Roberto Rodriguez.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
I knew him as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Roberto is a victim of police violence. You may have known that. And so after George Floyd, he was getting calls and about Latino deaths by police and this and police violence and gun violence. And so he knows his story very well.
Yeah.
But he couldn't explain or express to the rest. And so he called me in and along with our good friend Yvette Sochoko, and we started a 2-year study of gun violence and death at the hands of police, with the goal of identifying Latino population because there existed no previous effort to quantify the count of Latinos killed by police of one sort or another. And so, long story short, you can Google it. Raza database, killing of Latinos, and I'll pop up everywhere. And
I'm on the website now.
Democracy Now, Laura Flanders. I recommend Laura Flanders. So this work sort of set the stage for how to quantify the deaths of Latinos, and unfortunately, Latinos are killed nationwide at the same proportion as our population. Good or not, 19% of people killed by police are Latino. They're about 25% of the 20% of the population. Unfortunately, African American deaths, I confirm, are 25% of all people killed at the hands of police. They only make up 12% of the population. And so this is just another data point that highlights, these issues. I consider myself a journeyman demographer. I'm not tied to an academic or university, but I do get my hands dirty with the data and just come up with the best that I can. There's probably 5 PhDs somewhere in the work that I've done, but it also lends to the possibilities of the future. There's also a database, my work with the Antioch, my work here with redistricting. They all fall under the categories called citizen science. And with the tools of mapping, the web, the cloud, and a smart folk person here or there, tremendous work can be done. You don't need to, like my first class at UCLA, you go into, code room and, the computer, the computers are spinning and, very, very, very much, 2001 Odyssey movie. Today, just turn on my computer and I've got it all in front of me. So
That's a beautiful thing, huh? I mean, we can even do this. We don't need a studio to do our podcast, right?
Yes. And so there's a lot of opportunity in this field. Increasingly, there's more possibilities with AI. I think a lot of the future redistricting might be done with AI. Now, that's a good or a bad thing because you can tell it the prompt to give you, hey, give me 5 new Democrat Republican districts in Texas. So AI will do that. What it won't do is fix the other 10 that you may have inadvertently made more vulnerable. And so we don't know that. That's what I hear folks say. I'll look at it a little closer. But, I've created beautiful districts already for Texas, and we'll see how close they get to what I've created. But the possibilities are endless for the future. The technology is just beyond scale. And there are tons of great young Latinos entering this field. And the women are becoming a greater share of the GIS. Latina women are big. And what do they do?
In fact, we may have to have this show again with you and your daughter, as I now understand she's now doing this kind of work.
Well, she's a leader in this industry. She's a leader in the young professionals area. She's actually in Seattle right now, showcasing her work with for Esri. And so, why are women going in? Why? Well, for one, it's an open field, and two, it's a field that fixes things. Okay, you don't go into GIS to gerrymander the world. Okay, you go to fix parks. You go to identify street lines. You go to fix sidewalks. You go to fix things. And so that's why we're seeing, I think, more folks of color and women and Latinas, and I'm gotta tell you, they're pretty bright. I'm glad I've got my job done. But some of those young folks coming are phenomenal.
We're so appreciative that you've been able to be doing this kind of work for as long as you have and fixing the things you're fixing. And I'm glad as your career has progressed, you've been able to be more and more involved in affecting this kind of change. So with that, we've hit our time limit. I want to thank you for being a guest on this show, and stay tuned to Impacto AZ in the future. We may revisit this again with Jesus and his daughter, and we'll be having more shows like this centering the Latino voice on different important issues of the day. With that, have a great day, and thank you, Jesus and Juan.